Hello YouTubers, it's Willow here, and I am unfortunately here to do a little memorial video today for Saskatchewan Transportation Company, STC, which is my home province's province-wide public transit system. So it was a public transit system, and I hate using the word was here. It was a public transit system that connected all the little communities in Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan is primarily a rural province, so that means there are a lot of people who live outside the main centers, who live in very small communities, far-flung communities. Saskatchewan's also a large province. Most of the provinces in Canada are large, take up a large landmass. So STC was a web that connected us. For 70 years, for more than 70 years, it was an essential service for a number of people. And it has been annihilated by the neoconservative Bradwell government in Saskatchewan. The Bradwell government has taken it upon themselves to destroy something that ultimately they should never have had the power to destroy. They've taken it upon themselves to focus on penny pinching, and literally the amount of money that closing STC will save the Saskatchewan government is relative pennies. Okay, it's 1/10 of 1% of the Saskatchewan budget, $17 million a year. That's how much they claim they will save by shutting down this critical, crucial service that transported 250,000 passengers in the most recent year of data to more than 250 communities. Many of these communities have no other public transit options. So basically, people are now stuck. Okay, I think one of the primary criticisms of neoconservatives is that they're mean-spirited and that they focus on dollar bills and the bottom line. They focus on sort of a fake and corrupt money system as opposed to people, okay, and what people really want and need. It's all about making everything profitable, right? Everything has to turn a profit. Even something that's a public service, right, under the neoconservative lens, is basically useless, a drainer, if it doesn't turn a profit, which is kind of a ridiculous way to look at things in my mind. Now, I will say that I'm anarchist, and so I actually believe that the entire political system is corrupt. So I'm not, I have equal criticism for the neoliberals, for, the neoconservatives, for anyone on the whole political, mainstream political spectrum. I think it's all corrupt. So neoliberals probably have a criticism of being, have foolishly spending taxpayers' dollars and spending money on kind of pie in the sky things that are not necessary, right? And that there's some validity to that as well. But neoconservatives, I grew up in a rural right-wing area, and I have to say that there is an intense meanness about a lot of their policies, okay? And this one hits right at the heart because STC is a service that I've used more times than I can count to go from my parents' farm to one of the major cities and back and forth, but also to different communities in Saskatchewan. I've used STC a lot because I've almost always been a non-driver in my lifetime, and in order to live life as a non-driver in a kind of a mainstream society that is designed almost entirely for drivers is not an easy thing. And this just makes it that much harder. for people, especially for people in rural communities in Saskatchewan. And, this is going to hurt a lot of people. It's actually even going to be dangerous for a lot of people, because I'm not sure if everyone is aware of the Highway of Tears in British Columbia, but it's a stretch of highway in British Columbia that doesn't have bus service. So people generally take to hitchhiking. And, over 1,000 women have gone missing from this stretch of highway in British Columbia. And so basically what the Wall government has done is it's going to be setting up an unfortunately similar scenario. And again, all for a drop in the bucket. This isn't really going to make the Wall government any substantial coin. This is 5 cents per day per Saskatchewan citizen. $18 per year per Saskatchewan citizen is what it costs to have STC. And they've actually done some surveys recently, and the majority of people in Saskatchewan would want to continue STC for that amount of money. So this is something that's been taken on by the Bradwell government that is not listening to the people. At the end of March was when the announcement was made that the Wall government, they announced their budget, which had draconian cuts to a number of public services. Some of those have been reinstated. One in particular would be the cuts to libraries. He cut libraries across the board as well. That has been reinstated. Saskatchewan Transportation Company, unfortunately, despite protests across the province for the entire time. So beginning at the end of March, there were protests all across Saskatchewan saying, no, save STC. We need this. This is an essential service. This is just ludicrous that it's being scrapped for, a drop in the bucket, 0.1% of the Saskatchewan budget. Again, you have to think that dollars and cents aren't even, it's not even really about dollars. It's about the kind of, free market ideology of neoconservatives where they hate public services. They hate the fact that their taxpayer dollars are going to support these bums who can't afford their own, vehicles or, whatever their reasoning is. It's mean and it's dangerous, and it's not, it's regressive. It's taking us backwards instead of forwards. Like I said, I'm mostly been a non-driver. Although when I was living in a rural area, I was pretty much forced to have a vehicle because it's, there are no regular public transportation options to get groceries or to, do your random errands. But for most of my life, I've been a non-driver, and it's not easy to live in a world that has been literally designed for car drivers. I think we made a huge mistake when we got rid of the train structures, the train network. I think that should have been developed. And sure, have individual vehicles as well for the people who can afford them, for the people who want them. But provide the alternatives for public transit, for mass transit, which is much more efficient, and can connect people in really critical ways. So anyway, I wrote an article about the scenario and a little bit about the astrology that was going on. The planet that rules transportation, Mercury, was in a square to Pluto in Capricorn, which is all about kind of the power of the governmental hierarchy and corruption and mean-spiritedness and, power moves by the hierarchy, right? In relation to transportation. And that's exactly, I think, what we saw under this. And I know that reading things doesn't make for the best YouTube video, but I don't think that I can say it any more succinctly than how I wrote it. So I'm actually going to read the article that I wrote. And I believe the title of it was Regressive Transportation Policy Under the Mercury-Pluto Square. On March 22nd, 2017, as transportation planet Mercury in Aries formed a square to illegitimate power and hierarchy Pluto in Capricorn, the neoconservative Brad Wall government in Saskatchewan, my home province, announced in its budget that it will be shutting down the province's bus system. Yes, that's right. No public debate, no public consultation, no transportation alternatives offered. It's just over because Brad Wall and his buddies say it is. This government, full of one car per person drivers, decided that it can unilaterally eliminate Pluto, a mass transportation system, Mercury, that many people throughout the province have relied on for over 70 years. The Pluto and Capricorn bulldozer strikes again, creating a nightmarish and potentially deadly Pluto transportation scenario, Mercury, for many. The Wall government was much beloved by conservatives in the heavily oil-dependent province of Saskatchewan when oil was at $100 US a barrel. And this government spent and spent and spent, keeping itself in that golden position. No thought for the future. Then, of course, the price of oil crashed, as it always does. Oil is a highly manipulated, highly volatile, boom and bust commodity. This really should have come as zero surprise. But there is a strange amnesia that sets in when people are riding an oil high. And believe me, I've experienced this many times, living both in Saskatchewan and in Calgary, Alberta, the town that oil built, the city that oil built. They somehow believe it's going to last forever and spend accordingly. The Wall government was no different. The price of oil has now been halved and sits around $50 US a barrel. And now this government has decided, as so many governments do, to make up for its own spending sprees on the backs of the poor and sick and vulnerable in society. All to save $17 million a year, which in the scope of a provincial budget the size of Saskatchewan's is a drop in the bucket. This is 5 cents per Saskatchewan citizen per day, $18 per year. It is 0.1% of the province's overall budget. Saskatchewan is an agriculturally based province, meaning it has many small communities and farms spread throughout its landmass as people go about producing food to feed the world, among other activities. It also has many remote northern communities. Saskatchewan Transportation Company, STC, is the only bus service that goes to many of the smaller rural communities. It connects the little places with each other, and it also connects the little places to the cities, where people can access essential services that can't be found in the smaller communities. Many people use the bus service for doctor's appointments and medical treatments, and this decision leaves them stranded. Around 300 people used STC to access cancer treatments alone in 2016, so that's only cancer treatments, not all of the other medical services that were accessed. STC is also often the only company that will deliver freight to the smaller communities. Now this is huge. Because farmers and ranchers and mechanics and people in those industries, those primary industries in the rural areas, are often ordering parts and supplies, and STC was sometimes the only affordable option, the only viable option for them, and now they don't have it. They don't have that anymore. As of yesterday, that was the last day, This is big. There is a Greyhound run in Saskatchewan, Greyhound bus run, but it only goes along major routes, missing the more remote and rural communities in the province. In short, this bus is an essential service for many seniors, disabled people, sick people, rural people, students, people living below the poverty line, and people who do not drive. I've used buses my whole adult life. I've used STC more times than I could count, primarily traveling to and from my parents' ranch. Without this mass transit system, I would have had few to no transportation options, and it fills me with dread to now have this option eliminated so unceremoniously. But there is something more that is being destroyed here by this short-sighted, mean-spirited little man and his short-sighted, mean-spirited little cronies. Something broader, something that really hits me where it hurts. The Wall government is dealing a major blow to the strong collective spirit of the people of Saskatchewan, a place where people have traditionally chipped in to help each other. Saskatchewan is the province where universal healthcare was born. The Canadian system is terribly flawed, some would say irreparably broken, yes, contrary to popular belief. But the fundamentals remain. If you break your arm, need medication, or need to see a specialist, you can get treatment regardless of your income level. You know how Canada's healthcare system is often held up as one to be emulated, particularly by the US? Well, it started in Saskatchewan. It started because the people in Saskatchewan didn't want to see their fellow human beings suffer. They wanted everyone to have the care they needed when they were sick or injured, regardless of income, regardless of ability to pay. Saskatchewan is a hard place in which to survive. The climate is harsh, but it's more than that. Since the beginning of civilized humanity, independent farmers and ranchers have been under attack by the establishment. The establishment doesn't like people being self-reliant, growing their own food, feeding each other, sharing, making decisions in their own communities. In current times, the rules and regulations and bureaucracy, the manipulated markets, the high land and machinery prices coupled with low commodity prices, and now weather modification, have squeezed and squeezed and squeezed until only the true diehards or the people with other income streams are left trying to make a living doing it. Because of this constant attack and lack of support, it's damned hard to make a living farming or ranching. Damned hard. So no matter how many generations removed they are from the family farm, in the hardwired soul memory of the people of the agriculture-based province of Saskatchewan is the knowledge of what it's like to not have two dimes to rub together, no matter how hard you work, no matter how exhausted you are. Built right into the DNA of the people in Saskatchewan is the memory of the horror of not being able to pay for a doctor or a hospital stay when it was critically needed. The shame, the frustration, the anger, the hopelessness, the despair. Built right into their DNA is the memory of the horror of medical care being inaccessible, too far away, too far from home, being too late to save someone they loved. All this is running through the people of Saskatchewan. Not just in Saskatchewan, but definitely in Saskatchewan as well. And all this has been motivation to say no more, never again. As the Wall government now makes it more difficult to access healthcare for many people in the province, as it destroys, Pluto, a transportation safeguard and safety net, Mercury, this soul horror, Pluto, is stirred. The plutonic threads are plucked. The likelihood that people will not get the care they need is increased, including alternative healthcare treatments. The likelihood that a person will put off a checkup or doctor's visit in the city for another year is increased. The likelihood that people will just put up with the symptoms rather than go through the hassle and embarrassment of finding transportation is increased. Yes, in a country that is so dominated by one car per person transportation, there is often shame and embarrassment in not having transportation, in being reliant on someone else, in having to ask for a ride. And I will say that this is exacerbated in Saskatchewan because there's very much a threat of you have to do it on your own, independence, not relying on other people. So, it's an even harsher climate there. Saskatchewan has a long history of grassroots collective struggle, of joining together and fighting for better conditions for everyone. In the horrifying, Pluto, decision to end the Saskatchewan Transportation Company, Mercury, the Bradwell government is disconnecting people from each other in my home province. It is striking a major blow to the collective spirit that has underpinned life in Saskatchewan for so long. Aside from the essential services people are being cut off from in the cities and elsewhere, this decision destroys a valuable part of Saskatchewan's culture and history. It damages a transportation network, a web that brought us together. This decision ends much-needed restorative and celebratory visits to family and friends. It ends the excitement and renewal of a trip to the city after many months of nothing but lonesome prairie. It ends new faces coming through your small town. It ends spontaneous conversations being struck up between strangers meeting on the bus. So where are you headed? Where are you from? How far till Saskatoon? It ends the classic smokers groupings outside the bus terminals. Those transitory cuirasses formed and temporary connections made as the bus makes its stops along the highway. It ends the pile-ups in bus station cafeterias like clockwork, with greasy fries and cups of coffee and the relief at being motionless for half an hour. It ends so many possibilities for non-drivers to go to new places on their own. It ends the independent travel of many, including myself. Even just the knowledge that you could go somewhere if you wanted to, the spiritual freedom of that. It also ends the jobs of 224 people, leaving them at the mercy of a very tough job market, making them vulnerable to poverty themselves. This is regressive transportation policy at its finest. eliminating efficient mass transit while making people more reliant on resource-heavy individual vehicles. As many of you know, I'm an anarchist and I don't believe in the mechanism of government. This is a prime example of why. This government is not doing what's best for the people it claims to serve. It's harming the sick, the disabled, the poor, and the vulnerable in order to prop up its own bullshit facade as a fiscally responsible, no-deficit conservative government. Imagine what we could do on this planet if we were not being constantly attacked, eroded, and hamstrung by these establishments and institutions, by illegitimate people in positions of illegitimate power. A better world for everyone is not only possible, it's necessary. We all deserve a world that does not prop certain human beings up on the backs of other human beings. We deserve a world that does not benefit some by hurting others. And in this situation, many people are being hurt so that the wall government can put forth this facade of being this no deficit, tightening up the belt strings, neoconservative government, okay, that is unwilling to spend even a relatively paltry sum to maintain a transportation web in this country, in this province. Imagine this world, this better world, and keep it in your mind's eye always, because that's what we're working for. That's why we're here. That's why I'm writing this. And that's why people came out on their lunch hours or after lunch or on their weekends to protest these cuts. That's why people have kept up this pressure. People have written letters. People have worked the legal angle. They have packed courtrooms. This is why people are putting their own time and energy into this situation, because they know that this is huge. This is a huge blow to people. This is going to cause so many negative repercussions for people. And again, it's a dangerous situation that's been created. Also that, 0.1% of the Saskatchewan budget could be eliminated, I know the people of Saskatchewan, myself included, will find a way. We will, because we have to, and that's always been the way of it in Saskatchewan. We'll all find a better way through these times together, no matter where we live, as we're being ruled by power-hungry, outdated, and treacherous beasts, because we have to find a better way. There's no alternate option. Thanks for all the rides, STC. Thanks for giving me independence and options as a non-driver. My heart's very sore today to say goodbye. And I will also say that my protest against this will not end. And I know that the people who have been involved in the Save STC movement and protests feel the same. There's been a lot of talk about, the private sector will step up and will provide options. Nobody's going to be stranded. This is going to work. The scenario is that the private sector will step up where it's profitable to step up. It won't necessarily be connecting all of these far-flung communities because it's not going to be making enough money doing that. Okay? That's why it's a public service. Because a public service is provided, it's guaranteed. There's no guarantee that any of the routes will have any type of a private mass transit system put in place. There's no guarantee that it'll be affordable for people. It could come and go very easily, and that's happened multiple times in other provinces where little private companies pop up, can't make a go of it, and are done. So I think that that's kind of besides the point. The point is that the majority of Saskatchewan people, and yes, I don't really believe in a majority rules situation, but since we're always looking at this majority rules, right? The majority of people in Saskatchewan would vote to continue for $18 a year. Would vote to continue STC. So there are a lot of options that could have been put in place before just axing it, and that's the real mean-spirited, that's the real just horrendous way of this neoconservative government, is that it literally just doesn't care about the harm that it's doing with its policies. And I'm here to tell you that this is going to harm people. It's going to harm me. And I don't even live in that province anymore, you know. But it's going to harm people, and it's going to, like I said, really strike a blow to the collective spirit in that province, because we're disconnected now. There's no connection. You know, there's no transportation web that's connecting us anymore. And there may be some spotty public services that pop up, but that's not as valuable. That's nowhere near as valuable as that tried and true public service, you know. We could have gone to smaller buses on routes that didn't have a large number of riders. That wasn't done. Okay. So there were a number of cost-saving alternatives. The small buses were ordered. They just weren't put in place. So there were a number of cost-saving measures that could have been brought in that were not brought in, right? It was just, there was no, like I say, there was no debate. It was just a decision that was made by people who are car drivers, okay? I can almost guarantee you that there was not a single bus user in the members of the Legislative Assembly, period, of any political stripe. You know, okay, maybe there's a handful of all political stripes, but I would say the Wall Conservative government does not have a non-car driver in it, okay? They're all one person per vehicle car drivers, and so they create policy for for a world where the dominant way of being is one car per person, car drivers. And I'm not saying that, I'm not saying get rid of all independent vehicles, individual vehicles. What I'm saying is we have a mix of circumstances, we have a mix of people, and there is an argument to be made that mass transit is a more advanced, form of transit into the future. That mass transit is actually what we need to be. We need to be creating these mass transit webs. That's how we actually advance the situation, making it more convenient for people. You can't starve the system of money and make it horrifically inconvenient, which then of course lowers the number of people who are going to use it, and then say, oh, see, it's not profitable. No, nobody wants to use mass transit. Well, they would use mass transit if, again, the convenience level was, if the networks were there, if the infrastructure was there, if the convenience level was there. So, it really is a car driver's world at this time in North America in general. It's almost like living in like a post-apocalyptic world to be a non-car driver and to try to navigate this world that's been set up for vehicles. It's been designed for like inanimate machines, not really for people, right? And so, I think that there needs to be kind of a blend, a mix of these different ways. But this, like I said, just completely eliminates the public transit option for so many communities. And it will, because the private companies will take up only the profitable routes, okay? Well, probably most of the small communities would not be considered a profitable enough route to have a regular run, Anyway, this is it's a sad day. It's a sad day to say goodbye to STC. It's been such a part of the culture of Saskatchewan. It's been such a part of the culture of, the rural area where I lived. Me coming in at 10 o'clock at night, my mom being there to pick me up, or heading out from the farm, 7 o'clock in the morning, hopping on the bus, getting into Regina at noon, and stopping in all the little towns on the way that you would normally not see not stopping. It's a real loss. And even though I'm now in another province, my heart just is heavy for the loss that people are experiencing with the loss of STC. So again, thanks for the ride, STC, and I hope somehow I'll be catching a ride with you sometime in the future.